Lebanon is on the hunt for a new prime minister today after its former premier resigned 2 months ago. The current frontrunner to take on that top job is Hassan Diab. He won the backing of Hezbollah today, a key step towards securing his nomination. Now, Lebanon has been gripped by political and economic crises for months now, and mass protests have demanded the entire political leadership of the country step down. So one of the biggest challenges for the new prime minister will be to stabilise the economy as well as quell those protests in the streets. Well, for the latest today, let's cross to Beirut and speak to Molana-Allen, our correspondent who's standing by for us there. Layla, first of all, tell us a bit more about Hassan Diab, the man who today, it looks like, may be named the new prime minister.
So Hassan Diab is a professor, he's an engineer, he works at the American University of Beirut, and he's really a bit of a political outsider. He has served once in government before, between 2011 and 2014. He was the Minister of Education, which very much fell within his remit as a professor. So for many people, the idea here of nominating him is that he's a political outsider. He's not seen as being allied to anyone in particular or having any particular political background. And the problem is that is not strictly true. He actually himself, when he served in that government, he served under Miati, who was a prime minister who was allied with a certain group of political parties here. So he does have some alliance there himself. Now, in terms of pleasing people here who say they want somebody who's a technocrat, who's outside of the government, as I say, he does sort of fit the bill. But already people are starting to come forward and make accusations of him. A former student of his at the American University of Beirut this morning said that he used to take the papers of his students and put his own name on them and publish them. Somebody else said that he bought his son's way into working at the medical lab at AUB. Now, none of these accusations have been proven yet. He is, of course, a private citizen, so people haven't looked into these things yet. But what isn't clear yet is whether people are immediately accusing whoever is the new person being nominated by the current political establishment, or if, in fact, there is actually some corruption on his slate as well, because that's been the accusation of previous people put up for this role. 2 times before, over the last 2 months, since Prime Minister Saad Hariri resigned on October 29th, we've seen people almost be nominated for this role. Several postponements of these consultations that are happening today. The first time the person nominated, there were huge protests, and as a result, he pulled out. He was a billionaire businessman, and people said that he was part of the political elite. And the second time, the main Sunni authority in Lebanon did not support that candidate. They supported a return for Saad Hariri instead. And it was yesterday that Saad Hariri said he would not be returning as prime minister, and so the votes seemed to come together for Hassan Diab. So far, 50 out of 128 MPs have put forward their names. We've got 9 for Nawaf Salam, who is unlikely to get the vote. We've got 18 for Hassan Diab, but we've got 23 who are saying they won't nominate anyone at all.
Layla, you mentioned then those protests that have been sweeping Lebanon for several months now. Is it likely that this appointment of the new prime minister, whether it is Hassan Diab or somebody else, will push Lebanese people back home, or are they likely to stay out in the streets?
So what's clear is that Hassan Diab, as far as protests are concerned, is a better choice than Saad Hariri coming back. The very idea that Saad Hariri would become prime minister again after the main victory protesters have seen over the last 2 months was getting him to step down on October 29th was absolutely unacceptable to protesters. However, one of the problems is that what protesters are calling for is a functional government that will solve the huge economic and political crises that Lebanon is facing right now. And it seems very unlikely that a government led by Hassan Diab will do that for a couple of reasons. The first reason, as one political analyst said to me this morning, is the main reason he is being chosen is not because of his skills, because of his background, because of his integrity, because of his plan for the country, but simply because he is palatable to the other political parties, all of whom have to vote, and they have to get a majority to make him prime minister. That doesn't really seem a great mandate for a prime minister to lead, and is part of what people here, the protesters here, say is the very problem with this political system, that it's more about alliances than actually functioning government and helping the people. And the second issue is that even though it does look like he's likely to win today, 74 of those 128 MPs have said that they will vote for him, that's not really enough, because the reason he looks likely to win is simply because some of the parties are are not voting for anyone else, with Saad Hariri standing down. His alliance does not have another candidate. Now, roughly, this falls into the camp that's divided into the March 8th and March 14th alliances. The March 8th alliance is the two main Shia parties, Hezbollah and Amal, and the main Christian party, the FPM, who President Michel Aoun is a part of. And then the March 14th alliance is led by Saad Hariri, the Future Movement, and a couple other of the main Christian parties. Now, they are mostly divided, and they're the ones who have to come together to run a parliament. And Saad Hariri, so far, being prime minister, because he must be a Sunni, has meant that they have had some power there, while March 8th did very well in the last elections. The problem here is that March 8th, those three parties, Hezbollah, Amal, and the FPM, they are the ones who want Hassan Diab to be the new prime minister. Saad Hariri's party not voting for anyone, and so what's very likely to happen is that if he does get elected, the Future Movement and those other Christian parties will say he is non-representative, he doesn't represent everyone in parliament.